So this morning I have the privilege to bring to you the Torah portion. Today's Torah portion, maybe let me back up just one second. What's a Torah portion? That's the Torah portion. What is a Torah portion? What are we talking about? It's the passage, and specifically we're talking about we go through the entire Torah every year, right? So the Torah is the first 5 books, sometimes called the Pentateuch. They're the Torah. We go through the whole thing every single year. We start off in the fall with Genesis, and we end the next fall with the end of Deuteronomy. Right now, we're on 34, I think. This is the 34th portion of the Torah, and I have the honor today of bringing you the first Torah portion of a new book. So Bemidbar is in the wilderness. You wouldn't recognize that because that's the Hebrew name. English, the book of Numbers. So I will bring to you a Torah portion. First, I'm going to go over it in a nutshell. I want to talk about the entire thing. And then because I have the privilege of bringing Numbers, I'm the first person to talk about Numbers this year, I want to talk about, at a high level, just the structure of the book. What does it look like? How does it look? And then I'm going to bring you back into this Torah portion with the observations that I made while doing my studies this week. So I want to give all the credit to Chabad.org. Again, I'm going to use their summary to begin. In the Sinai desert, God says to conduct a census of the 12 tribes of Israel. Moses counts 603,550 men of draftable age between 20 and 60. Andy's note, side note, if you used the census of Americans, of the United States population, and you just proportionally take that number of men between 20 and 60, what you would end up with is an estimate of the number of people of Israel, about 2.3 million people. That's if you're counting men, women, and children. The census here is just men between 20 and 60. That's only the 12 tribes other than Levi. Okay. The tribe of Levi, they number 22,300. That's males of any age. That's males just 1 month old and all the way to as old as they get. So a second note, if that's all the males, and I want to calculate roughly back into how many people would be that equals men, women, and children, that's about 45,000. It's roughly double the number of men. So Levi's 45,000. All the rest of Israel's 2.3 million. That's where we are at this point. This is the second month of the second year. So we've been out of Egypt for about 1 year at this point, at the beginning of Bemidbar. The Levites are to serve in the sanctuary. They will replace the firstborn, whose number they approximated since they were disqualified when participating in the worshiping of the golden calf back in Exodus. The 273 firstborn who lacked a Levite to replace them had to pay a 5 shekel ransom to redeem themselves. When the people broke camp, the 3 Levite clans would dismantle and transport the sanctuary, and they would reassemble it at the center of the next encampment. When they erected their own tents around it, the Kohathites would carry the sanctuary vessels, the ark, the menorah, everything gold, in their designated coverings on their shoulders. They would not be able to take them in wagons. The other tribes of Levi would get to use wagons. This one wouldn't. No wagons. You can't take the ark in a wagon. You got to carry it by hand. Okay, the Gershonites, they were in charge of the tapestries, the roof coverings, and they would camp to the west. The families of Merari, who transported the wall, the panels, the pillars, they would all encamp to the north. Before the entrances, the sanctuary entrance on the east side, Moses, Aaron, and Aaron's sons. Beyond that Levite circle, the 12 tribes camped in 4 groups of 3 tribes each. To the east, Judah. Judah was the main banner, and obviously here they're the main tribe of these 3. Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. To the south, Reuben, Simeon, Gad. To the west, Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin. To the north, Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. This formation was kept also while traveling. Each tribe had its own Nasi, prince, leader, and also had its own flag, its tribal color, and their own emblem. Let me take it up a level. I want to go back to our menorah. Believe it or not, we have another chiastic structure. What's a chiasm? A chiasm is like a story that has reflections, okay? So if the story reads from here to here, if this is the beginning and this is the end of the story has these connections, right? The beginning connects to the end. The second part of the story has a connection, and it's in the same pattern of the menorah. The entire book of Numbers is structured this way. Same with the Leviticus. Leviticus was structured in a very similar way. And so I want to walk you through this just real quick at a very high level because I think it's an important understanding. It's an important point to understand because otherwise, what does this look like? What is Numbers? How many people read the book of Numbers just for fun? That's not a lot of people. Okay. So 1% of the room, but everyone else, what? Does it seem like kind of random stories? Like, this is the most depressing story in the Torah, right? You're going to read through this. They're in the desert, and you know they're going to make a really bad choice and wander for 40 years. From here to here is 40 years. An entire generation dies from here to here, okay? Today I'm going to summarize this part, but before I dive back into this, I want to just walk through this real quick. I'm going to keep it high level. We're in Sinai. We've just had a covenant. We're doing a census. At the end of the book, we start off with a census. We're about to have another covenant, okay? That's where we are here at the end. Here and here are traveling. We're traveling to Paran. We're traveling from Paran, okay? In both situations, the people grumble. There's a punishment. Rejection of Israel, a punishment here. Same thing here, except from the beginning, the people grumble against Moses. And if you remember, a reflection has an opposite kind of view, right? I'm looking at the mirror, and what's on the right is my left, and what's on the left is my right. You know, everything is opposite as you're looking at it in the mirror. The people grumble against Moses here. Moses grumbles against the people, bashes the rock. Consequence, he can't go into the promised land. From here to here, all of this we're in Paran. Okay? Paran, 12 spies go out, reject God. God rejects them. Laws of sacrifice for the people. Here, Korah. Korah rejects the priesthood, and God accepts Aaron. You got the budding staff. Okay? Red heifer, all the sacrifices for the priests. Okay? What's in the middle? The way I determine what's in the middle, I see the pattern, rejection, people rejects God, he rejects them, sacrifices. Same pattern happens here. There's one thing that's left in the middle. It's the Sabbath. Sabbath breaker, tzitzit, remember to obey my commands. The tzitzit are to have a blue strand on it. Remember to obey my commands. Remember, I brought you out of Egypt. If you could just remember my commands, your life would be good. You'll live long in the land. So that's the structure. How does that relate to today? Notice, by the way, just looking at the structure of the book changes the book a good bit, doesn't it? Did that change the way you look at Numbers all of a sudden? It has that effect. Superficially, it just seems like a bunch of random stories. But as soon as you see that there is a structure and there's something in the middle, God is drawing your eyes to the middle. Don't miss this thing. It's the easiest thing to read over the middle until you see the chiasm is pointing you in the... No, I'm going through the story, and all of a sudden I just notice all these parallels that keep pointing backwards, as if I missed something. I go back to the middle, and that's where you can see God has something important for you. I'm going to emphasize it here. I'm going to get back into my Torah portion because I just covered the entire book. And I just want to bring out a few things that just seemed to jump out to me. Okay? By the way, I shouldn't have done this. So I gave credit to Chabad for the summary. I want to give credit to Overview Bible. If you will go to youtube.com and look up a channel called Overview Bible, all one word, you would see that chiasm I'm talking about. I didn't make that one up. That one actually came from them. He didn't call it a chiasm, but you can't help but see it. It's a very, very obvious chiasm. Okay. So, don't want to plagiarize. This is from me. There are 4 prominent tribes, and it's not what you would necessarily think. Who should be the most prominent of the tribes? Who? Reuben, right? Why? He's the oldest. He's the firstborn. He's not, though. You know, if you go back and you remember, there was a blessing that was given to him by Jacob. The blessing said, "You're my firstborn." But what did Reuben do? There's kids in the room, so I'll have to use big words. He exposed the nakedness of his father, right? With Bilhah, I believe. So, Judah's now first. Judah's the most prominent tribe. Judah, if you look at Judah and you look at the way all these tribes are laid out, Judah is in the east. He's in front of the tabernacle. How could he be given any more dignity than that? He has 2 other tribes. You add all those tribes together, it's 186,400 people. Men of arms. Sorry, not just people. Those are the legions of Judah. 186,000. No other group, north, south, west, none of them are that size. That's the longest. So you put them all in a row, you've got a pretty long stretch of people. Okay? The north and the south are about even, about 150. Got 180 on the east, 150 on the north and south. That's Dan in the north, Reuben in the south. Ephraim gets all of Rachel's children. It's Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin, all together right there in the west. It's the smallest group, 108,000. If I'm looking down on this, I'm going to stand in the east, and I'm going to look to the west, and I see in front of me a long group. I see 2 shorter groups, and then the shortest group. What do I see? It ends up being a cross. Looks very much like that one, except the top beam wouldn't be so long. Firstborns. I hope you didn't miss this. Firstborn was big time. It was very big. Let's talk about it. The firstborn, Pharaoh kills the males of Israel. Consequence, all his firstborns are killed. In the Exodus, the Passover, the people hide in the houses. They emerge through an opening of blood. It's like a birth. The nation of Israel is born that night. They're no longer part of Egypt. They are their own separate entity. They are born. That's actually their age. If you go into 1 Kings, you'll even find it there. 480 years after the Exodus is when the tabernacle or the temple was begun to be built. That's their age. Their age starts from here. They're born, okay? This is the birth of Israel. Levi is taking the place of the firstborn, okay? And in Israel, all the firstborn males are to be redeemed, either by a Levite to replace them or by 5 shekels each. Okay. So I hope you're seeing that. It's really big. It's a very important concept that's being brought out here, the firstborn. Okay? The Exodus was like a physical birth, maybe even like an adoption, depending on the age of the person. And if you think about it, what do babies do when they're born? Perfect little angels, right? They sleep like a baby. Except they don't. It's like the most right? Sleeping like a baby would be the worst thing ever. They cry all night, they complain, they need stuff all the time. It's like nonstop crying and complaining. And what has the nation of Israel done ever since they were redeemed and brought out of Egypt? They have complained at every single turn. Nothing's good enough. They're never happy. Wouldn't it have been better to die in Egypt? Why can't they just be happy? Well, I don't know. Kids are never happy. They never have enough. So I'm not looking right at y'all when I'm saying that. Y'all just happen to be really close. Look over here. Okay? But some people in the nation actually do act a good bit like adopted or foster children. Like they can't accept that they're part of God's kingdom. They can't accept where they are and where they fit in, right? And so eventually they are rejected. They reject themselves. But let me make this one last analogy. To me, when I'm thinking about all of this, there was a covenant right there at Egypt when they walked out. What is that like to you? Everything about that, to me, is a bris. That was their redemption. That was that happened for them as a promise all the way back to Abraham. The covenant with Abraham was marked with the circumcision. Okay? That is a covenant. And it's done at a time when the child is not old enough to completely accept on their own who they are and what they're supposed to do and what they're committing to. But they did get a covenant back there. They got one. So how does this apply to us today? Preachers' kids, rabbis' kids, there's a reputation there, right? Some of them turn out very godly. But then some of them turn out like devilish hellions. Many kids grow up in the church. They grow up in shuls and synagogues all over. And it's just really easy to take it for granted. It's easy to take for granted the protection that you have in your family. It's very easy to not experience the consequences of all your actions and therefore think that you are justified in where you are and what you have, even though you didn't earn it yourself. It was earned by your parents before you. When you're young, you only experience the cost of obeying and not obeying your parents. It costs a lot to you, doesn't it? At least it feels like it. When you're a kid, you're growing up, you give up things that other kids your age are not giving up. And it's more and more and more apparent as you get into your teens and young 20s. And you compare what you are doing and what you're not doing to what others are doing with no remorse. When do the kids finally see the benefits of obeying? When do they get that? When does that part come? When do they experience the outcomes of the risks that they take? In some ways, it depends on the parents. If you protect them too long, they're going to feel like you're oppressing them, the kids. If you don't protect them enough, you're worried that they're going to be drug away by wolves. And they don't want you to help them. They don't want your help. If you don't prepare them, there's no hope, though. So what I want to do is just give you one last summary. Let me summarize where we are with this. God, when his nation was born, when Israel was born, he took them to the wilderness to protect them. He took them away from the other civilized parts of the world. He took them to the Mount Sinai. That was in order to not just protect them, to prepare them. If you didn't prepare them, what would happen? There's no hope if you can't be prepared, but you can't be protected forever. There is no preparation will have any effect until the kids actually do experience some pain. They will have to grow. Growth requires some pain, okay? And so as you watch and you read through the book of Numbers, you will see there is growth throughout the entire time. When God's people make a bad choice, there is pain experienced, but redemption. There's always a way back. He is constantly protecting them, though preparing them, primarily preparing them to be a nation. It might take them 40 years to get them there until they're ready. But I think that's something for us to take. As parents, as teens, as kids, this book is about us. it might seem like it's about another nation, but honestly, if they came out seeing miracle after miracle, doesn't it bother you that they had so much trouble obeying? But your kids experience miracle after miracle in their own lives and don't care. It's us. All of us were the nation of Israel. And so it's easy for us to look back on them, cast aspersions, but it's us. Okay. So I hope this time, this Torah portion has blessed you. I want to close with remembering love. Love your children. That does not mean like a grandparent, but like a parent. Okay. Honor their obedience and reward justly. Thank you.